The words came at me like poison through the organ music. I was standing beside my husband's casket, my hand resting on the polished mahogany, when Jennifer leaned in close. To anyone watching, it looked like comfort. Her arm around my shoulders, her head bent toward mine. "Now that he's gone, we're selling this house," she whispered. "You're going to a nursing home. Michael and I have already looked at places. Don't make this difficult." I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I kept my hand steady on that casket and stared at the flowers. I felt something inside me turn to steel. My name is Eleanor Mitchell. And what I'm about to tell you is how I discovered that the worst betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Before I continue, drop your city and state in the comments. It helps me know I'm not alone in this. Henry and I had been married for 43 years. We met in 1978 at a community theater where I was doing costumes and he was building sets. He had sawdust in his hair and made terrible jokes, and I knew by the end of that week that I'd found my person. We built our life in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, in a beautiful craftsman home with a wraparound porch and a garden that took me 20 years to perfect. That house was every Sunday morning on that porch with coffee, every rosebush marking our anniversaries, every Thanksgiving and birthday. Henry was a civil engineer, brilliant with structures. I taught second grade for 35 years. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. We'd worked hard, paid off our mortgage, and owned our home outright. No debt, no obligations. Our son Michael was our only child. After 3 miscarriages before him and 2 after, he was our miracle. We probably spoiled him. Good schools, college education, help whenever he needed. He'd call every Sunday from college, come home for holidays. He seemed happy, connected to us. Michael met Jennifer 8 years ago at a corporate conference. She was 32, he was 38, working in pharmaceutical sales with that sharp, polished confidence. Everything about her was calculated. That first Thanksgiving, I cooked for 2 days. Turkey, stuffing, 3 pies. I set the table with my grandmother's china, wanting her to feel welcome. But there was something cold in her eyes when she looked around our home. She'd touch things, our antique clock, the vintage sideboard, and ask, "Is this worth anything?" Not the story, just worth. She steered every conversation to money. "What do you think this house would appraise for?" "What are you doing with all that equity?" Henry noticed. "Did you see how she kept asking about the house?" he said after they left. I had noticed, but I pushed it aside, told myself I was being the critical mother-in-law. Michael loved her. When they got engaged, his face was so happy I swallowed my concerns. Their wedding the following spring was lavish. 300 guests, designer everything. We contributed $15,000, significant savings for us. But I overheard Jennifer tell the wedding planner, disappointed, "Henry and Eleanor can only manage $15,000. We'll have to cut back somewhere less visible, like our gift was an embarrassment." The first few years were manageable. They lived in Des Moines, 2 hours away. We saw them on holidays. Michael would call briefly about work and weather. Jennifer rarely came to the phone. During visits, she'd comment about our valuable real estate, and Michael started suggesting we downsize. Then 2 years ago, Henry started getting sick. Fatigue. He'd come in from the yard needing to sit for an hour, then swelling in his ankles, sudden shortness of breath. The diagnosis was congestive heart failure, progressive. The heart wearing out, working harder, eventually giving up. Henry was 71, and suddenly our time was finite. Real, measurable. That's when Michael and Jennifer's visits increased dramatically. At first I was touched. Jennifer brought casseroles, insisted on cleaning. Michael handled yard work. They seemed caring. But I noticed strange things. Papers moved in Henry's study, financial statements in different positions, the filing cabinet not quite closed. Mail opened before I got to it. Jennifer asked Henry detailed questions when she thought I couldn't hear. "Do you have your passwords written down somewhere safe? Has Eleanor ever managed the finances? What happens to the house if something happens to you?" One afternoon, I came home early from the pharmacy and heard them in the kitchen, speaking low. "We just have to wait it out," Jennifer was saying. 6 months to a year, maybe 2. We need to be positioned right when it happens. "It feels wrong planning like this while he's still alive," Michael said. "It's practical," Jennifer shot back. "This house is worth $400,000, probably more. When he dies, she'll be emotional, vulnerable. That's when we get her to sign papers. She'll be so grief-stricken she won't think clearly. And if she won't, then we push the nursing home angle. She can't manage this place alone. We're family, just trying to help. People will side with us." I stood in that hallway with my hand over my mouth, my world tilting. This was my son, discussing how to manipulate me while my husband lay dying upstairs. I backed out silently, drove around the block, then came in loudly. That night, I told Henry. Henry was getting weaker, but his mind was still sharp. About 8 months before he died, he called me into his study and closed the door. His face was grave, and my heart started pounding. I thought he was going to tell me his condition had worsened. Instead, he pulled out a folder I'd never seen before. "I've been documenting things," he said quietly. "I've been paying attention. I think Michael and Jennifer are planning something specific. I've caught Jennifer photographing documents in my filing cabinet. I installed a small camera last month, disguised as a clock. Last week, when I was resting upstairs, I heard them talking about getting you to sign papers while you're emotional." "I heard them too," I whispered, tears starting. "Weeks ago. I didn't want to believe it." "I know." Henry reached for my hand. "I didn't want to believe it either. But I think they're planning to take advantage of you after I'm gone. I think they want this house. I think they see you as an obstacle to be moved out of the way." "What do we do?" I asked, my voice breaking. Henry's jaw tightened, and I saw a flash of the strong man I'd fallen in love with. "We protect you, and we do it quietly. We don't tell them we know. We smile and accept their help and let them think we're naive and trusting, and meanwhile, we build walls they can't break through." Over the next 6 months, while Henry's health declined steadily, we worked with our lawyer, Robert Dennison. Robert had handled our wills and estate planning for 20 years. He'd been there when we bought the house, when we set up Michael's college fund, through every major financial decision. He was more than our lawyer. He was someone we trusted completely. When Henry explained our concerns, Robert didn't dismiss them. He was quiet for a long moment, then said, "I'm going to tell you something. I've seen this exact scenario at least a dozen times in my career, more often than you'd think. Adult children, usually with spouses who are more aggressive, start seeing their elderly parents' assets as something they're entitled to, something they can't wait for." "It's obscene," I said, my voice shaking. "It is," Robert agreed. "And it's also, unfortunately, legal in many contexts if they can get power of attorney or prove diminished capacity. So we need to make your situation bulletproof." Robert crafted protections, explaining each one carefully. First, the house. Right now, it's in both your names as joint tenants, which means when Henry passes, Eleanor, it automatically becomes yours. But that's not enough protection. We'll transfer Henry's interest to you now with a life estate and specific restrictions. He drew diagrams, explained the legal structure. The house cannot be sold, transferred, or mortgaged without your explicit consent. And here's the key. We're including a restriction preventing you from transferring it to any direct descendant or their spouse for 10 years. Even if you wanted to give them the house, you legally couldn't. "Why 10 years?" I asked. "Because by then, if you do want to give it to them, it'll be a clear-headed decision made long after Henry's death, not something done in grief or under pressure." "And honestly?" Robert looked at us seriously. "If they're the kind of people I think they are, they won't wait 10 years. They'll show their true colors long before then, and you'll have no desire to leave them anything." We documented everything. Henry had to sign affidavits stating he was of sound mind, that no one was coercing him. We had witnesses, notaries, everything in triplicate. We updated the will to put Michael's inheritance in a trust he couldn't access until age 55, 9 years away, managed by an independent trustee. Added provisions that if he or Jennifer tried to manipulate me or take legal action, he'd forfeit everything to charity. One more thing, Robert said in our final meeting, just a month before Henry died. Henry, you have a $400,000 life insurance policy with Michael as beneficiary. I recommend we change that to Eleanor as sole beneficiary. Do it, Henry said quietly, and I saw the pain in his eyes, the grief of having to protect me from our own son. Henry died on a Tuesday in late September. Beautiful morning, sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows, birds singing in the maple tree. He'd been in hospice care at home for 2 weeks, the hospital bed set up so he could see the garden. I was holding his hand when he slipped away around 10. The hospice nurse checked his pulse, nodded gently. He's gone. I'm so sorry. I sat there for another hour, not ready to let go. When I finally stood, my legs were shaky. I called Michael. Dad's gone. Oh, Mom, his voice cracked. We'll be right there. They arrived within 2 hours. Michael looked devastated, eyes red, face drawn. He hugged me, and for a moment I felt like I had my son back. But then Jennifer was there, and the shift happened. Eleanor, you poor thing, she said. You shouldn't be alone. We'll take care of everything. And she did. Jennifer took over with terrifying efficiency, called people without asking, made funeral arrangements without consulting me. When I tried to say I wanted certain hymns, she patted my hand. Let's not worry about details. You're too upset. I'll handle it. She picked the most expensive casket. Henry deserves the best. When I looked at the price, she waved it off. Don't worry about cost. We can discuss finances later. Like she was already spending money that wasn't hers. The funeral was Friday. The church was full. Henry had been loved. The organ played, the pastor spoke. Michael gave a beautiful eulogy. For those 5 minutes, I saw my son again. But then came the final viewing. I stood beside Henry's casket, hand on the mahogany, looking at his peaceful face, thinking about our first date, our wedding, 43 years of mornings beside him. Jennifer came up beside me, arm around my shoulders, head bent close, her perfume too strong. She whispered, breath hot against my ear. Now that he's gone, we're selling this house. You're going to a nursing home. Michael and I have already looked at places. Don't make this difficult. I didn't move, didn't react. I kept my hand on that casket and felt something inside me turn to ice. I finished goodbye, touched his face one last time, stepped back, let them close the casket, walked out with my head high. That night, alone, I sat at Henry's desk and read through every protection he'd put in place. Then I called Robert. I need to see you Monday morning and set up a meeting Monday afternoon. Michael, Jennifer, you and me. Did something happen? She showed her hand at the funeral. And now, we're showing ours. Saturday and Sunday were endless. They came both days to help. Jennifer walked through like she was measuring for furniture, commenting on outdated wallpaper and what this place could sell for. Jennifer arrived Saturday with coffee. Let's go through Henry's clothes for donation. Better to rip off the Band-Aid. She was in my bedroom, pulling out his suits before I could protest. This is nice, she said, holding his gray pinstripe. Someone at Goodwill will be thrilled. Michael wandered the house like he was appraising it. In the living room, he ran his hand along the wall. Original plaster. We'd need updates before selling. We? I asked quietly. He looked uncomfortable. Whoever ends up with it. Jennifer talked about practical things, your finances, your living situation. I've set up a meeting for Monday, I said. Her eyes lit up. A meeting? With Robert Dennison, my lawyer, to discuss estate matters. 2:00. Jennifer glanced at Michael, that victorious look. They thought they'd won. Sunday was more of the same. Jennifer reorganized my kitchen, threw away my spices, marked territory. That night, after they left, I sat in Henry's chair and cried. Not just for him, but for Michael too, for the pain of knowing my son had become this. Then I wiped my eyes and prepared for Monday. Monday morning, I met with Robert alone. I dressed carefully. My navy suit, pearl earrings, low heels. I wanted to look like someone in control. "How do you want to play this?" he asked. "I want them to understand exactly what they tried to do and exactly why it won't work." At 2 o'clock, I walked into Robert's conference room. Michael and Jennifer were already there, sitting on one side of the long mahogany table. Jennifer had dressed in a black suit, still playing bereaved daughter-in-law. Michael wore a dark tie and that uncomfortable expression. I sat across from them, my hands folded calmly. Robert sat at the head with several thick folders. "Thank you all for coming," Robert began formally. "Before we discuss any options, I need to share information about the current legal situation that you may not be aware of." "Of course," Jennifer said, leaning forward eagerly, that fake sympathy on her face. "We just want to make sure Eleanor's taken care of." "Let me stop you there," Robert interrupted, his voice cold. He opened the first folder with deliberate slowness. "First, regarding the property at 847 Maple Street, let me clarify the ownership situation." He pulled out a document, slid it across the table. Jennifer grabbed it, Michael leaning over to read. "As you can see, the property is owned solely by Eleanor Mitchell under a life estate that was established 18 months ago. Henry transferred his entire interest to Eleanor with very specific provisions." "What kind of provisions?" Michael asked uncertainly. "The house cannot be sold, transferred, or mortgaged without Eleanor's explicit written consent," Robert said. "Furthermore, and this is crucial, there are restrictions preventing the property from being transferred or sold to any direct descendant, which includes you, Michael, or to a descendant's spouse, which includes you, Jennifer, for a period of 10 years following Henry's death." The room went quiet. I watched Jennifer's face cycle through confusion, understanding, then fury. "What does that mean?" she asked sharply, all pretense gone. "It means," Robert said, his tone glacial, "that even if Eleanor wanted to sell you this house, or give it to you, or transfer it in any way, she legally cannot do so, not for 10 years. Henry specifically structured it this way to prevent exactly the scenario you've been planning." "That's ridiculous," Jennifer snapped. "Why would he do that?" "Because he suspected you'd do exactly what you're doing," I said quietly. All three turned to look at me. "He knew you were planning to take my house the moment he died, and he made sure you couldn't." Michael went pale. "Mom, that's not—" "Don't lie to me, Michael," I said, steel in my voice. "Not anymore. Not after everything." "Let's continue," Robert said, opening the second folder. "Now, regarding financial matters and documentation. In the 6 months before his death, Henry documented several concerning incidents. He installed security cameras in various locations throughout the house that you weren't aware of." Jennifer's face went white. "He what?" "He recorded video and audio," Robert continued calmly, "including footage of you, Jennifer, photographing financial documents in his study on 3 separate occasions, including you, Michael, going through his filing cabinet without permission, and including several very interesting conversations." He pulled out a laptop, turned it toward them, and pressed play. The audio was clear. My voice, Jennifer's voice from that day I'd overheard them. Jennifer's voice. "We just have to wait it out. The doctor said 6 months to a year, maybe 2 if he's lucky. We need to be positioned right when it happens." Michael's voice. "I don't know, it feels wrong planning like this while he's still alive." Jennifer's voice. "It's not wrong, it's practical. Your parents have assets they're not even using. This house alone is worth $400,000, probably more. When he dies, she'll be emotional, vulnerable. That's when we get her to sign the papers. Power of attorney, maybe even get the house transferred. She'll be so grief-stricken she won't think clearly." Michael's face had gone from pale to gray. He looked like he might vomit. "Oh my God, Dad heard that?" "I heard it," I said. "I came home early, walked in the side door, stood in the hallway and listened to you two plan how to rob me while my husband was dying upstairs." "Mom, please let me explain." Michael started. "If you're enjoying this story and want to hear more about standing up for yourself, please subscribe to the channel." "There's more," Robert interrupted, pulling out another document. "Here's a recording from 2 weeks before Henry died." He pressed play again, Jennifer's voice sweet and concerned, talking to Henry. "Henry, have you thought about power of attorney? If something happens and you can't manage things, someone needs to be able to step in. Michael and I would be happy to help." Henry's voice, weaker but firm. "We already have everything set up, Jennifer. Robert handles it all." Jennifer's voice with an edge. "But Eleanor might need help too. She's never managed the finances, has she? It's a lot for someone who's not used to it." "The condescension dripping from your voice is really something," I said, looking directly at Jennifer. "I have a master's degree in education. I managed classroom budgets for 35 years, but you assumed I was helpless." "I was trying to help," Jennifer protested weakly. "You were trying to take," Robert corrected. And thankfully, Henry saw it coming. "Let's talk about the will." He opened the third folder. "Michael, you need to understand what your father did and why." He slid another document across the table. "Henry updated his will 6 months ago. You are still listed as an heir. Your father loved you even knowing what you'd become, but your inheritance is now held in a trust." "A trust?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "A trust managed by an independent trustee, not by you or your mother. You cannot access the funds until you're 55 years old. That's 9 years from now." Jennifer exploded. "That's insane! You can't do that!" "It's already done," Robert said calmly. "The document is legally binding. Henry was evaluated by 2 independent physicians who certified he was of sound mind. Everything was witnessed and notarized by 3 separate parties. It's airtight." "But why?" Michael asked, tears in his voice. "Why would Dad do that?" "Keep listening," Robert said. "The trust has conditions. If you or your wife attempt to manipulate Eleanor in any way, coerce her, take legal action against her regarding the house or her assets, or attempt to have her declared incompetent, you forfeit the inheritance entirely. Every penny goes to the American Heart Association." The silence was deafening. "Furthermore," Robert continued, "there's a provision about elder abuse. If evidence emerges that you attempted to financially exploit Eleanor or coerce her into any transfer of assets, that also triggers the forfeiture clause. Your father wanted to make sure you couldn't hurt your mother even after he was gone." "This is insane," Jennifer said, but her voice had lost its power. "What's insane," I said, my voice shaking with controlled fury, "is what you said to me at my husband's funeral, at his casket, Jennifer. While I was saying goodbye to the man I loved for 43 years, you leaned in and whispered that you were selling my house and putting me in a nursing home. You said you'd already looked at places. You told me not to make it difficult." Michael's head jerked up. "What, Jennifer? You didn't—" "I was just being practical," Jennifer stammered. "I was trying to—" "You were trying to manipulate a grieving widow at the worst moment of her life," Robert said coldly, "and if that isn't the definition of elder abuse, I don't know what is." "There's one more thing," I said, finding strength in my anger. "Robert, show them the last document." Robert pulled out the final folder. "Henry also updated his life insurance beneficiaries 6 months ago. Michael, you were originally listed as the beneficiary of a $400,000 policy. As of February, Eleanor is the sole beneficiary." I hadn't known about that specific detail until Robert called me Sunday night. Even in his dying months, Henry had been protecting me in ways I didn't know. "No," Michael whispered. "No, Dad wouldn't." "Your dad would," I said. And he did. Because he loved me more than you apparently do. Jennifer stood abruptly, her chair scraping back violently. "This is theft. We're his family. We deserve—" "Deserve?" I stood too, something hard and furious rising in my chest. "You deserve nothing. You stood beside my husband's casket and threatened me. You spent months, years maybe, planning how to steal my home and warehouse me somewhere convenient. You turned my son into someone I don't even recognize. We didn't mean, Michael started, but I cut him off. Yes, you did. You meant every word, every plan, every calculation. You want to know the worst part? My voice cracked. Your father died knowing what you'd become. He spent his last months not just fighting his failing heart, but fighting to protect me from his own son. Do you have any idea what that did to him? What it did to us? Tears were streaming down Michael's face now. Mom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Jennifer said we were just being responsible, planning ahead. Don't blame her, I said sharply. You're a 46-year-old man, Michael. You made choices. You chose to listen to someone who saw your dying father and grieving mother as nothing but assets to liquidate. You chose to go through his private papers. You chose to stand by while she planned to throw me away like garbage. I never wanted this, he sobbed. I love you, Mom. If this is love, I said quietly, I'll take hate instead. Jennifer grabbed her purse, her face twisted with rage. This isn't over. We'll contest it. We'll fight this. We'll find a way. No, Robert said, standing now, his voice carrying absolute authority. You won't, because if you try, if you contest anything, if you take any legal action whatsoever, you trigger the forfeiture clause immediately. Michael walks away with nothing, and I will make sure every court in this state knows exactly what you attempted to do. Elder abuse, manipulation, financial exploitation. I have recordings, documentation, witnesses. I will bury you both. Jennifer opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. My advice? Robert continued. Walk away. Leave Eleanor alone. Live your lives and hope she's generous enough to forgive you someday, because legally you have no recourse. Henry made sure of that. You can't do this to us, Jennifer hissed. We already did, I said. It's done. It was done months ago. You just didn't know it. Jennifer stormed toward the door, then stopped, turned back. You're a bitter old woman. Michael, come on. We don't need to listen to this. But Michael didn't move. He sat there staring at the table, tears running down his face. Michael, Jennifer said sharply, let's go. Go where? He said quietly, not looking up. Mom's right. We did this. I did this. Don't be ridiculous, Jennifer snapped. Your mother is manipulating you. Can't you see? She's the one being cruel here. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Get out of this office. Get out of my life. I don't want to see you again, Jennifer. She looked at Michael one more time, and when he didn't stand, didn't follow, she made a sound of disgust and left, slamming the door. The three of us sat in silence. Michael's shoulders were shaking. Robert quietly closed his folders. I felt empty, hollowed out, but also somehow stronger. Finally, Michael looked up at me, his eyes red and devastated. Mom, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can fix this. I don't know either, I said honestly. I love you, he whispered. I know I showed it in the worst possible way. I know I failed you. I failed Dad. But I love you. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this, I said. Love isn't supposed to calculate and scheme and plan to take everything from someone. I know. He wiped his face. I'm so sorry. For everything. For not being stronger. For letting Jennifer... No, for choosing to go along with Jennifer. For being weak and greedy and terrible. What happens now? I asked. I don't know, he said. I think I need to leave Jennifer. I think I've needed to for a long time. I think she turned me into someone I hate. She revealed something that was already there, Robert said quietly. Own that, Michael. Michael nodded, accepting it. You're right. God, you're right. He looked at me. Can I try? Can I try to be better? To be the son you deserved? I don't know, I said again, and I meant it. The pain was too fresh, too deep. Maybe someday, but not now, Not for a long time. Okay, he said. Okay, I understand. He stood slowly, like an old man. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna figure things out. And maybe, if you ever feel ready, we could talk. Maybe, I said. Not yes, not no. Just maybe. He walked to the door, stopped with his hand on the handle. Dad was a better man than I'll ever be. I see that now, and I'm so sorry I let him down, that I let you both down. Then he left quietly, the door clicking shut. Robert let the silence settle. Are you okay? No, but I will be, eventually. You did the right thing. You protected yourself. That's what Henry wanted. I know. I looked at him. Thank you, Robert, for everything, for believing us, for not thinking we were paranoid. I've seen too much to dismiss those instincts, he said, and Henry's documentation was meticulous. You both handled this exactly right. That was 8 months ago. I'm still in my house on Maple Street. I tend the garden every morning. The roses Henry planted are blooming again. I sit on the porch with my coffee and watch the neighborhood wake up, except now there's an empty chair beside mine. Michael left Jennifer. He sent me a letter 2 months ago, 5 pages apologizing for everything. He asked if we could talk sometime, if I'd let him try to rebuild what he'd broken. I haven't answered yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Some betrayals cut too deep to heal completely, no matter how sincere the apology. But I learned something important. Love can make you vulnerable, but it can also make you strong. Henry loved me enough to see danger coming and build walls of protection. I loved him enough to honor those protections by standing firm, by not letting grief make me weak. I'm 70 years old, living on my own terms in the home I built with the man I loved for 43 years. I wake up in my own bed, make my own decisions, and nobody can take that away from me. Some people say I should forgive them immediately, that family is everything. But those people didn't stand beside a casket and hear those whispered words. They didn't watch their husband die while their son plotted against them. I did what I had to do. I protected myself with the tools Henry gave me, and I'd do it again. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter who's trying to knock you down. You're stronger than you think. Take care of yourselves.